Great. Okay, I'll share my screen. Well, welcome to the second office hour for the Applying Behavioral Science to Create Change micro credential. Before we get started, just want to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from the land of the Kulin Nations, specifically the Wurundjeri people. We are still in wombat season. You may have seen some mushrooms growing. I saw some today. My dog tried to gobble some of them on my walk. Um, it's warm during the day, but the nighttime and the mornings are misty and cold. Birds are migrating from Tassie, and the lyrebirds are starting to do their courtship dances. If you see a lyrebird on Mount Dandenong, or maybe out in Gippsland at Walhalla, you consider yourself lucky because they do like to hide, and they are a little bit shy when it comes to humans. So today we're just going to recap some content, have some free-flowing discussion. I'm going to break down the assignment with the second assignment. But feel free. Oh, wait, I do apologize. This is not the right one. Where is it? Here it is. Here we go. But feel free to yell out at any time. I have a little bit of a PowerPoint that's going to break down the assignment step by step. Wait a minute. No one can see that. Sorry. Apologies. But if you have any content questions, feel free to put it in the chat box or yell out at any time. This is a two-way conversation rather than me just talking at you guys. So feel free to yell out any burning questions before I get stuck into it. All right, well, we'll move forward, but if anything pops to mind, just yell it out. All righty, assignment 2. So as the same with assignment 1, the same with assignment 2, leave your summary to the end because that way it'll have marinated in your brain. You'll have a good understanding of the literature and all the components, and you'll be able to summarize it. So we'll leave that to the end. So starting with the target behavior or the target audience and behavior. So let's break this down. Firstly, you'll want to identify your target audience, and using the ATAC framework will be really helpful because you'll be able to drill down really specifically. We don't want to boil the ocean here. We want to get really specific. So instead of saying all Australians, you want to say, if it's something like recycling, you want to say female or household managers between the ages of 25 to 55 in the state of Victoria, something really specific because it's going to make your life so much easier. You want to describe the target audience a little bit. What are the characteristics? What are their normal routines looking like? You want to justify it. So make sure to use evidence, link back to the research. We're going to build a stakeholder map. You've been practicing that this week. So that's feeding into building the skills for assignment 2. You'll want to identify your target behavior using a suitable framework. Again, the ATAC framework is very suitable here. And then you'll just need to briefly describe the target behavior. What are the features of this target behavior? So I've got a little pre-baked version. We're just going to go through it. This has got to do with recycling. Oh, bear with me. So as we can see here, the identified target audience is Australian residential tenants aged 18 to 35. And what are some characteristics of this audience? Well, they commonly live in rental properties, often apartments or share houses. And they're responsible for managing their own household waste. So no one's doing that for them. Some more characteristics about the challenge, the problem. They're facing some practical barriers, such as limited space for sorting, unclear bin instructions. They may have like what do they call them? A multi-unit dwelling bin area. Yeah, Emma's giving me a nod. You know more about this, Emma, than me. Feel free to yell out if you've got any extra facts. So I used to live in an apartment and we had our sorting area in the basement and it was an absolute disaster. And for a number of reasons, it was unclear, all of that jazz. I could go on, but I won't. So the research is showing younger people and renters are less likely to recycle consistently than older or home owning populations. Interesting, we're calling back to the research there. It's painting a bit of a picture about these groups of people. So it looks like they're pretty ripe for change because these are the people that they're in, the messy middle. They're not, they're not the homeowners who are probably complying a little bit more. So this student has identified through stakeholder mapping that there are some key actors at the point of disposal. We can see here they've got a really great color-coded map here. So I can see by the legend, green means people or groups. That little salmon peach color means legislation. The blue color means organization. So we can see how things are interacting here. I can see that waste collection services has a big influence on individuals because those lines are thick. We can see that there's policy coming in here. We can see the Australian government has a big influence over national waste policy. So this is painting a really rich picture of the challenge, the audience, the behavior. So we've got a list here of 4 different behaviors, and they're all in this wonderfully color-coded ATACT framework. If I'm going a little bit too fast, don't worry, you'll have access to the recording and the PowerPoint at the end, so don't worry too much. We can see here, as I said, they've separated the components by color, the components of the ATAC framework. I probably just would like to see a color key to know what colors represent what, but I can see that these ATAC statements are really clear. Residential tenants aged 18 to 35 identify recyclable packaging items when the packaging becomes waste before disposing of it. Separate recyclable packaging from non-recyclable packaging before disposal. So, here's a good one. Rinse away food or other residue from recyclable packaging before placing in recycling bin. So you will need to justify all of these behaviors, and you'll also need to use a suitable framework. Here we've got the impact likelihood matrix to identify the most suitable target behavior. So as we can see here, they have prioritized using the impact likelihood matrix, and it looks like behavior number 3 is the most suitable. So residential tenants aged 18 to 35 will rinse away food or other residue from recyclable packaging before placing in the recycling bin. And now they go on to justify this a little bit. So they're saying both behaviors 1 and 2 would involve an increase in knowledge, so that individuals would need to be able to correctly identify recycled packaging. The literature is showing us that giving people more information, it's unlikely to change their beliefs and their behavior. But a method of introducing the knowledge at a relevant time would be to improve labeling. So that's a really timely thing to do, improving labeling. They're jumping a little bit ahead here. They've got some suggestions on some interventions. I'll allow it. So improving labeling means that people are able to, at the time of disposal, are able to sort things out. Behavior 4 has a different actor, residential landlords. Most local governments supply recycling bins to each household, so it wouldn't be a difficult task for landlords to ensure the appropriate bins are present when starting a tenancy. So they're they're kind of weighing things up, but it's looking like residential landlords, probably not the target group. I would suggest you just kind of stay within the target audience once you've made that decision. But behavior 3 involves adopting an additional step for householders when disposing of their recycling. This is a small effort to ask of people, and they can use their dishwasher to rinse recycling. So it doesn't consume any additional water in the process. It's not like an extra step. You're putting your dishes in the dishwasher, so you can put your plastic containers in there at the same time. But they've gone and justified it by saying contamination can cause entire truckloads of the recyclables to become unusable. So they're looking at the impact. It's got a really massive impact if this behavior is undertaken. Whole truckloads are going to be saved. So for this reason, behavior 3 will be the target behavior for the proposal. So it doesn't matter what you decide, just as long as you justify it. Yeah, go for it, Emma.
Sorry, just a pet peeve. Food is probably not going to cause entire truckloads to end up
Oh,
being disposed of, but it can have some impact. So, but I don't know. Some people think, oh well, everyone's contaminating, so all of the recycling is all going to landfill. So what's the point? That's kind of some of the steps we have seen people taking. Um,
mm.
it can have significant issues, but it's not like your neighbour putting something that hasn't had all of the oil dripped off is going to cause catastrophic failure, but still rinse your recycling, very important. PSA over now.
Oh, I love that contextual information. You'll have to take that up with the author. What's their name? Advotech. I'm not sure what. I'll have to find that. I'll have to find that reference. But hey, as long as it's justified with some research, you can tell me anything. You can tell me that Trump lives on the moon if there's some research behind it. I'd love to hear it. I mean, I really wish he did live on the moon, but that's another story. Great. So they provided a really good set of explanations for their decision. So it's looking like they're going with number 3. We can see that there in that beautiful, easy, and effective quadrant. Love it. Chef's kiss. All right. So now we've got our behavior and we need to make a research plan. Now, this is a little bit of a steep learning curve. It may be quite some time since you've studied before. I know when I did my master's, I was like, what the heck are these research tools? I still haven't quite wrapped my head around them because there's just so many options under the sun. The main thing is, whatever you decide, just justify it. Throw in some references from some research, but why, to justify why they're great. I don't mind what you choose, just as long as you back it up with some evidence and an explanation to say, like, I've chosen this tool because it's found to be the most effective when used with this target group. Great, love it. Now, if I know we're at in the midpoint, we're sort of in the midpoint of the course. If you're finding like I'm just getting lost in the literature, I sometimes have a little chat to ChatGPT and say, just tell me like I'm 12, what the heck stratified sampling is, because I've got no idea. Just tell me like I'm 12. That'll give you some good contextual information. So research plan, you've got to have some data collection tools. You've got to justify them. You've got to describe how you're going to be using them. What data are you going to be collecting? And how is your data going to be used? And that feeds nicely into the evaluation. So this student has said, the literature shows there's a frequent misalignment between individuals' intended behavior and actual behavior. We know this. One study showed that 90% of households claim to recycle, but when they looked at the data, it's only a 9% national recycling rate. So what does that tell me? That tells me that self-reporting is subject to strong bias. So they've said, for this reason, online surveys have been discounted as a research method because they're just not going to be accurate. I think that's a really, really wonderful justification. And they said, likewise, focus groups, they're not going to be accurate. because some people may be persuaded to respond in a certain way due to social norms. I know that focus groups, like when you get people in a room, sometimes they want to please the researcher, and so they'll nod and be like, "Yeah, I do the things that you're asking of me." That happens a lot. A lot of people want to please researchers and make their research to be successful. That happens a lot. So they've also said here, face-to-face interviews have been selected as most appropriate because interviews allow the interviewer to use opening questioning to probe more deeply around the three drivers of behavior: attitude, social norms, and perceived behavioral control. Well, in the land of TPB, in the land of the theory of planned behavior. So they're saying that, we can really drill down when it's one-on-one. We can really start to elicit their beliefs about these behaviors, like we're going to be seeing, I think it's next week in module 6, we start to look at belief elicitation. So don't worry, we're just getting ahead of the curve here. And they're saying here, the sample's going to be semi-random. So the group of people that we're interviewing, it's going to be semi-random. It's going to be conducted across a couple of council areas because they share the same materials recovery facility. There's going to be 4 sample populations, so four groups of people. With one serving as a control group. So those people won't be subject to the intervention. Those people are just going to go about their normal daily lives. What have we got here? Streets from each of the 4 areas will be randomly chosen, and the interviewer will use door knocking and introductory questions to identify if the potential interviewee fits within the target audience. And remember, the target audience was tenants who were renting, and they were between the ages of, what was it again? 18 to 35. Great. So if they're an old granny, then they will be exempt. Great. So this student has outlined what data collection they've decided to do. They've justified it. They've told me, surveys, not so great. It's not going to be great to collect data with surveys. They've told me how they're going to go about doing it. They're going to go door knocking. They're going to chat to those target audience members. They're going to find out if they're actually fitting within that 18 to 35 category. They've outlined what data is going to be collected. They're collecting data about attitudes, social norms, and perceived behavioral control when it comes to rinsing, recycling. And they've also told me how the data is going to be used. Why did they say that? Look, this is just a sample of the assignment, so I promise you, they've told me somewhere. Anyway, so moving forward, feel free to yell out any questions. Yeah, Linda, go for it.
I've got a question. I just popped it in the chat and it's probably really silly, but if you are going to conduct your research in a specific geographical area, do you then tweak your target audience to reflect the fact that your audience lives within a specific geographical area or not? Or is that getting too crazy?
No, that's great. That's really drilled down. In fact, we like to see that. So like if you live in, let's say I live in Maroondah City Council, and I'm really passionate about residents of Maroondah City Council, feel free to say I'm going to interview, the plan is we're going to interview residents of Maroondah City Council, something like that.
Okay.
Now, the research may not be reporting on residents of Maroondah City Council, but we can make some educated guesses from, some high quality research, whatever about your behavioral challenge.
Okay.
You're not, it's pretty likely you're not going to find residents of that council area. But we, as researchers, I'm not a researcher myself, but I'm research adjacent. But researchers like to make educated guesses based on what the research is telling us.
Mhm.
Cool. All right. So once we've got our research plan on collecting some, some beliefs, some beliefs from our target audience, getting that contextual information about what's going on, that's going to then feed into our proposed behavioral solution. So we need to present an intervention. We need to include some practical details about that, how it's going to be applied, how it's going to happen. How are you going to do it? We've got to base the solution on some evidence. So we can't just be like, I want to take people to Luna Park, put them on the merry-go-round. It's going to be a really fun time. And at the end, I'm going to tell them that recycling is awesome. Well, you know what? You can do that, but you gotta get some evidence to back that up. You can't just be like, I'm gonna give them fairy floss at Luna Park. I'm just making up a weird idea, but you've got to back this up with evidence. It can't just be off the top of the dome. You've got to link some research insights into this design and how you'll go about implementing it. So some insights might have to do with how do social norms play a big part in this audience? If it's got to do with vaping in young children, young adults, well, we know when it comes to vaping that young men and young boys, they really see vaping as a way to connect and identify and be a part of be included socially. So that's got to do, it's strongly linked to social norms and feeling that they belong. That's a research insight. So let's have a look at our pre-baked assignment. Alrighty. So they've decided rinsing helps reduce contamination, but access to water, basic cleaning routines, it's looking like many individuals in the target group don't consistently rinse their recyclables. Drawing on the behavior change wheel by Nietzsche and the COM-B model. I hope you're listening. These are really great models. This intervention that they're going to design is going to target motivation whilst leveraging capability and opportunity. So the literature on this age group is suggesting that interventions that support habit formation, self-identity, and social reinforcement are most effective. And they've backed it up with some research. And what they've chosen to do is they've chosen to create an intervention that uses some components of the behavior change wheel. They've chosen to use persuasion, enablement, education. So they've decided, let's do some commitment cards. They're going to do a letterbox campaign where people are going to have colorful magnetized rinse to recycle cards. This invites residents to sign a personal pledge. So this has got to do with social reinforcement, self-identity, personal pledge that they will rinse their recyclables. It's going to have a 3-step rinse guide. That's sounding like enablement right there. The motivational messaging, clean it like you mean it. That's persuasion. A QR code linking to a 30-second explainer video featuring relatable peers. That's enablement because you're enabling people after you show them the explainer video. They'll have commitment devices and visual cues. They're backing it up here with some research. Commitment devices and visual cues are found to improve habit adoption in young adults. So they're not just pulling this from thin air. They're saying, the research is telling us that these groups of people, they respond really well to interventions that support habit formation. And commitment devices and visual cues, commitments like making a pledge, visual cues, these magnets can sit on your fridge. They've been shown to improve habit adoption in young adults. Here's another one, Clean Bin Crew. Oh, bear with me. I've got a couple of screens that I'm working with here. We've got here partnering with 2 to 3 local micro-influencers. Local councils will co-create short Instagram and TikTok videos showcasing rinsing habits in a humorous, low-effort way. So they're persuading people, they're educating them on how to do it. I would say there's a little bit of modeling behavior coming in here. And that really links back to self-identity and social reinforcement. If people can identify with these micro influences and they're seeing this social behavior being reinforced, that really feeds into the intervention. So they're ticking a lot of boxes here. These videos will be targeted to 18 to 35-year-olds in the intervention suburb. Social modeling by in-group members strengthens perceived norms and motivation to perform sustainability behaviors. Well, they're ticking a lot of boxes here. I'm loving it. I would say definitely include intervention functions that are featured in the behavior change wheel. And if you can target components of the COM-B model, then it is going to be a great assignment. These models are available online. They're available in the course content. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed, that's totally normal. These are a lot of new models. We're still wrapping our heads around them, but we've got time. We're getting a head start, so don't worry. I'll be running another office hour next week, so for more questions, and if your ideas are forming, happy to provide feedback. Rightio, evaluation plan. So we need to outline some outcomes and measures. So what did we do? What's the outcome of the intervention? How did we measure that it actually happened? We've got to include the study design. We've got to include specific sampling. So who are the groups that we're chatting to and that we're running the intervention with? What's our unit of analysis? So that maybe you're not chatting to groups, maybe you're looking at physical materials, maybe you're weighing the recycling at the end and before. So that could be a unit, kilograms or tons. We've got to make sure that our evaluation plan aligns with the previous sections. And the way that the students set this up, the evaluation plan is going to really write itself because they've made some suggestions in the previous components, and you'll see. So the intervention will be evaluated using a quasi-experimental pre-post design. What the heck does quasi-experimental mean? It means that it's not done in a clinical lab environment, a clinical and/or lab environment, because it's out in the real world. These people are living in their homes. Pre-post, what the heck is that? It means that you take some data at the start before you do the intervention, and then you take some data at the end after you've done the intervention to see, has the intervention actually made an impact? Is there any outcomes that have been achieved that we wanted to achieve? What do you want your intervention to do? That's going to help you form those outcomes. What have we got here? Okay, I love this evidence. And feel free to take some of these research references because they are gold. Previous studies have noted, self-reported data, it's limited and it's subject to bias. We've got some wonderful evidence here to show us that. So to address this, the evaluation's got to be objective. What does objective mean? It's not subject to bias. It's not subject to human error. So routinely collected waste management data. We love to see it. What does that look like? That would look like actual physical recyclable materials. So the primary outcome, what do we want to achieve? The primary outcome is a reduction in the proportion of recycling plastic packaging diverted to landfill due to contamination. So we've got our main goal of the intervention. Some secondary outcomes, some sub-goals, maintenance or increase of total recyclable materials collected. Cool. Love it. That's a great goal. To ensure the intervention doesn't lead to avoidance behaviors. e.g. placing dirty recyclable into landfill bins. We don't want to see the intervention backfiring and people just going, you know what, I don't want to rinse this. I'm just going to throw that in the general waste. My boyfriend does that a lot, and I'm always going through the bin. And he knows, and that's just a good point to say information does not change behavior, because he knows which, yeah, I'm seeing some nodding from Emma. Oh, he knows. I could go on, but I won't. Primary measure. Okay, cool. Measure, that means what are you measuring? How are you measuring? So we've got kilograms. Now, you may not be looking at something that involves objective measures, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Your behavioral challenge might be a little bit more social. It might have to do with norms. It might be a little bit more gray. That's okay, just as long as you justify it. So primary measure, kilograms of recyclable waste rejected by materials recovery facilities due to contamination. So we can weigh that, it's objective. And then a secondary measure, secondary thing that we're measuring, total kilograms of recycling collected per suburb. And remember, they said it was like, I think they said it was like 4 suburb areas that were going to this one materials recovery facility. So that sounds like that's absolutely doable. It's definitely, you know, it's definitely measurable and it's definitely doable. But this is this is all proposed, so we could really put in whatever we want, and there's no budget constraints. So you could get Taylor Swift to come show people how to, we're going to record videos of Taylor Swift showing people how to rinse their recycling. So the pie is in the sky. We can do whatever we want. Great. And that's going to assess whether rinsing behaviors are accompanied by sustained or improved recycling participation. And we've got a little bit of research there to back that up. A pre-post designed with a matched control site will be used. So that means they're going to take a little bit of data at the start before they're doing the intervention. They're going to take a little bit of data at the end. But the control and the experimental groups are going to look exactly the same. So they're going to have very similar people in very similar suburbs who do very similar things, who are in the same age group. So it's just going to be, these two groups look exactly the same from a bird's eye view. And that's great, because it means that, they're very similar groups, and what affects one group can be generalized to the other group. So data is going to be collected 6 months prior to the intervention, and that's going to give us a baseline, right? That sounds like a good amount of time. Then the intervention is going to go for a 3-month period, and then there's going to be a 3-month post-intervention follow-up. The design allows for comparison of trends over time. Sampling will focus on suburbs with a high proportion of tenants aged 18 to 35 within the service area of that recovery facility. Comparable control suburb will be selected based on demographic similarity. Like I said before, that control suburb is going to look demographically really similar to the experimental suburb. Unit of analysis is the MRF area. Yep. And contamination and recycling volume data collected and reported at this geographic and operational level. Cool. So that's already being done. So we're just collecting that data. So that's lovely. We love to see it. Already we're at our summary. So hopefully by this time, when you're writing the assignment, this will all be marinating in your brain. You'll be feeling really passionate. You'll be like, I am so in the literature. I'm all over this. Then you'll be able to just summarize your challenge. What's the challenge we're dealing with here? What's the scale, impact? How far reaching is it? Where is it located? What's your intervention planning to do? My intervention is planning to do this. To understand the challenge, we're going to collect data. We're going to research. We're going to have a research plan. Sorry, we're going to have a research study on this demographic, and it's going to be great because of all these points. that I'm going to put in my summary. Now, make sure to put references in your summary. I know it works a bit like an executive, what do they call it? An executive summary, or like a bit like an abstract. But when you read research, abstracts always have references. So just make sure that you do tie back to the research that you have called on previously. And we've got a nice little pre-baked summary here. I'm not going to read it all out because it's just going to take forever. So they've said 61% of packaging waste is currently recycled in Australia. So we know that 61% is not 100%. So they're saying it's mostly cardboard and glass, but only like 18% of plastic 18% of plastic packaging is recycled. So 18% is really low, but it shows me that it's really ripe for behavior change. They're saying it's a clear failure to meet government packaging targets. Australians are producing around 100 kilograms of plastic waste per person. So they've got some nice contextual information around the problem. It's a huge threat to the environment. It goes to landfill. It contaminates waterways and oceans. It's not biodegradable. It takes thousands of years to degrade. We've got some flow-on effects like microplastics. So it's a pretty horrible problem. And then they're saying we must tackle this problem. This proposal is using the BehaviourWorks method to design a behavior change intervention to increase the rates of recycling plastic packaging. And they're showing we're going to identify, analyze, we're going to have a target audience, we're going to have an intervention, and then through the use of literature, they've identified the target behavior, and based on all of this, it's going to have a potential impact and likelihood of adoption. There's going to be a research plan. There's going to be a research study that's going to collect insights, and the intervention. We will design an intervention as well as a plan to evaluate the success of the intervention. You're really just laying out what are the components of your entire assignment. So just like have a line or two for each component. But that's a really good summary because that's just tying it all up in a nice little package. Oh, and here they've got some nice little handy infographics. You are absolutely welcome to include some imagery if it sparks joy, just as long as you reference the imagery. If you're pulling it from reports or research, this is just some nice contextual information to really paint that picture for the reader. And it goes without saying, make sure your evidence, your research evidence is summarized clearly, that it is from robust sources. That means, trustworthy sources. It's not from Wikipedia. It's not from some random blog that Joe Blogs has, written. Make sure you link evidence to certain stakeholders and make sure you link it back to the target group and the behavior. We just need to see everything justified. So if you think Trump lives on the moon, find some research to back that up. And again, this goes without saying, make sure that your presentation is structured in that nice introduction, body, conclusion sort of way. If you follow this, you without a doubt will have success when writing it. The assignment's going to write itself because this is totally broken down step by step. Make sure it's presented clearly. Feel free to use some visual elements to enhance the understanding for the reader. That'll help you get your points up. And here are some visual elements, just some examples. So we've got a nice little systems map here. This has got to do with teenage drinking in target group of young women. So we can see here, parents have a pretty direct influence. Nice little summaries of the evidence here, looking like there's high ambulance call-out rates in WA, high negative outcomes from drinking, such as social conflict. or vomiting. I'm sure we've all witnessed that before. This looks very pretty. You can use Canva. If you don't have time, ChatGPT and other AI tools, they can quickly whip up some really handy imagery for you. Some more imagery. We love to see it. Look how they've listed their target behaviors. It's very pretty. Great. I know that was a lot to take in. I'll be sticking around till 1 p.m. to take questions. And you don't have to feel like you're totally on top of it, because it's a lot. It's a lot. But I know you guys can do this. I have full faith in you.